Some people might say that a little income inequality is a good thing. It inspires people on the bottom to move forward and to aim high. The extreme gap, why is that a problem?
As you just said, a little bit of inequality is probably important. In fact, some inequality is necessary to get everybody to work hard and invent and reward investors and reward innovators. The problem is you get to a tipping point when we have so much inequality, when the middle class is shrinking and so many people in the middle are not getting anywhere no matter how hard they work, and a smaller and smaller group at the top is getting all the economic gains. Then you've got two big problems that start emerging. One, there's simply not enough purchasing power in the middle class and all those who aspire to join the purchasing class, the middle class, to keep the economy going. One reason this recovery has been so anemic is because there's just not enough demand for the goods and services that we have. Without wages rising, which had been the norm in America as productivity rose, you just have an economy that can't function. The second problem is related to that, but it's more political. When you have huge amalgams of wealth and income at the top, for example, right now in the United States, the 400 richest people have more wealth than the bottom 150 million Americans put together, then you get an inevitable corruption of the political process. The average person feels disenfranchised, feels cynical about the entire democratic process.
Well, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Mark, as someone who was there protesting on Wall Street.
I actually have a slightly different perspective on things. I mean, in my opinion, exclusively focusing on economic injustice through the lens of income inequality is a little misleading, because I think it leaves out the notion of class. And I think it tends to have sort of an individualistic, liberal take on the issue. And so I think we need to recognize that, as you said, there is this small group at the top, this upper class, to use the word that somehow has been sort of weeded out of a mainstream political discourse, and that their interests economically are diametrically opposed to those of much of the rest of society. For me, the issue is more, are we as an economy meeting the needs of people who need things, right? So in a society where we have 1 in 5 children living in poverty, where college students go hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt, where people can't afford their cancer medications, and where, you know, families are getting kicked out on the street because of the actions of criminal bankers that haven't even been prosecuted, we have a big problem.
Well, Larry, I want to ask you, so Mark mentioned criminal bankers, and you were someone who worked at Lehman Brothers, you still are in finance. Is it fair for Wall Street to shoulder so much blame? Do you think the individual people who work on Wall Street should feel a sense of guilt that they're part of the problem?
Especially at Lehman, it was, I mean, I was there, and I can tell you, one of my lines from the book, it was 24,992 people making money and 8 guys losing it. In other words, we had 30% of our entire balance sheet risk, our net tangible equity, in 3 commercial real estate investments. It's just a giant all-in bet that the entire Lehman team, the entire employees, all of the men and women, had nothing to do with. It was a very small group of people that made this giant bet. People are misjudging the impact of quantitative easing on the wealth effect. Through the Federal Reserve, they've kept this zero interest rate policy for so long that it's suppressed the incomes of so many people. Imagine retiring with like $1 million,
So you want to blame the Fed?
Well, I think the Fed has a lot to do with where we are now in terms of income disparity. I think it has a lot to do.
Would you agree with that at all, Robert?
Well, look, I think the Fed has done some things that are right, some things that are wrong, but the Fed is not really the central problem. It's tax policy, it is financial policy and deregulation, of which the Clinton administration, I think, is guilty. Certainly getting rid of Glass-Steagall, it should be resurrected. Also, it has to do with education and the way in which a lot of our poor people, Mark, you talk about class. Well, certainly we are organized around class in terms of issues of education, access to right to health care. Upward mobility used to be the defining feature of the United States economy. It is no longer. 42% of kids born into poverty never get out of poverty in their entire lives, which is a higher percentage than any other advanced country. So we need to look at this problem of widening inequality as a systemic problem. It's a problem that we have not paid attention to. The economy is not something kind of out there that we all sort of have to, in some sense, be affected by and have no control over. The economy is a set of rules those rules governing everything from financial markets to taxes to who is eligible for what benefits, bailouts, Wall Street, those rules are created by us, or at least ideally by us. Unfortunately, we've now got to a point in our society where the rules are no longer created by most people. They're created by a very small number of people who have most of the political clout because they have most of the money.